Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and well, it's going to be an interesting ship updates because we do have ship updates. And strangely enough, I think at least one of these things correlates with something I had said almost a year ago. I think it was back in February or January during a ship updates. I remarked on the fact that there was a gap in the ship lineup, one of the visible gaps that I see, and it seems in my mind that that is coming true. And oddly enough, perhaps one of the predictions, I believe, this was on SC Leaks a while ago. Execute created an episode back in June, Execute from the Info Runners, and they discussed a gunship, or what appeared to be a gunship. Looks like perhaps that is coming to life as well. So let's get started with where all of this legitimately starts, where all the legitimate information comes from, and it comes from very little to begin with. It comes from a series of 3 images. So this image was basically what we got to see along with the announcement that the IAE or whatever, basically the anniversary sale is coming up in 2019 or 20 or 19 days from now, depending on where you are and when you're watching this video. And it showed these little snippet images. Now, some people have kind of interpreted it one way, but there have also been some rumors going on, so I'm going to kind of take those rumors, take some of the ideas that I presented in the past, and I'm going to kind of tie these things together and say, this is what I think is what we're going to see this year. Now, first off, many people have looked at this and they've kind of seen 3 different ships, a preview for 3 different ships. I'm not entirely convinced. I feel that the 2 outer images are of the same ship and the central image is of a different ship. Now, some people view the central image and they say that that's the Mercury Star Runner. I disagree. The 2 outer images, however, though, I think kind of go along the lines of, an SC Leaks episode that I'm sure that a lot of you have seen, which came out in June, which I believe Execute was hosting that or participating in that. I am not entirely sure. I'm sorry. Execute from the Info Runners, to be specific, and they were talking about the rumored gunboat. That the rumors, the sketches, the ideas that have been kind of going around the community for a long time. This is what they had originally presented back in June as something that potentially CIG was working on. I feel that this lends legitimacy to those claims. I wasn't overly crazy about the sketches. It was supposed to be RSI. It does kind of have certain Polaris-like components to it, like the engines. Now, I've never kind of put the sketches out there, because on the one hand, it does seem fairly legitimate, but at the same time, we don't know. We don't know 100%. So also, there is a huge gap in the ship pipeline. We have talked about this so many times over the last year that the pipeline seems to be drying up. And certainly a ship like this could account for, a Corvette-sized ship like this could account for all that missing kind of development time. But at the same time, a bunch of polish work in Squadron 42 could also account for that missing ship pipeline time. And once again, it's not like we have the actual numbers that we can actually work off of and say, yes, they're only producing at 30% capacity that they're showing us versus the 7, where's the other 70? We don't have those numbers. It's a feel thing. It's without the real numbers, we kind of do it analog. We do it by feel. And so I do recognize the gap. I do recognize the likelihood. The role is obviously a role that we have wanted for a ship in and around this category. A role that certainly the Hammerhead doesn't really feel like it fills. The Hammerhead is definitely an anti-fighter, anti-smaller medium ship platform. So I am highly sympathetic to this. It being entirely flight ready, not so sure. But it is possible. That, I think, is probably the most likely to be a flight ready ship or very close to it, in my opinion. At the same time, with a ship like this, you have to acknowledge that if a ship like this did come out flight ready, I think that it would be the most likely candidate as well, because it is the ship that it kind of has its gameplay built into it. There may not be a PvE component that really supports it currently, but certainly players can find plenty of reasons to take a gunboat up against other players in the persisting universe. So technically speaking, while there isn't strictly, PvE style gameplay for ships of this size, though they can be kind of squeezed into smaller and less ambitious missions, I do think that this is probably the most likely to be a flight ready ship. Now, the image in the middle is, there have been the rumors of the consolidated Outland Nomad, and I think that is what the image in the middle is, and that is going to be a medium base building ship. Now, we've recognized that gap before. We've talked about it on ship updates, I think back in January or February. We recognize that there's a definite gap here. And, I've mentioned it on shows before that a base building ship, a medium one, does make sense. Because, certainly, in the past when I've talked about base building, something that allows us to kind of just not build on site, but something that allows us to take pre-built components and deliver those. And certainly about 3-4 weeks ago, Chris Roberts pretty much confirmed everything that I had said, that this would be a likely first step to base building. The Pioneer is something that's going to be a long ways away, whereas if you build it with Consolidated Outland, then you prototype a lot of that, that Consolidated Outland look that you can then project forward and take that to build your Pioneer. That to me sounds like it's going to be the most logical way to go about things. So that's what I think that this ship is. It's a medium base builder that allows you to deliver pre-bought components to a location and kind of, anchor them or build them into the site without having to construct them from raw materials on site. That is what I think the most likely outcome is. This, out of the two, I think is the least likely to be flight ready because simply the game isn't ready for it. And it's possible that CIG's gonna have a bit of a cargo carrying component to it in the interim while it's there, but I don't think CIG's too eager to put yet another dead ship into the game. So out of the two, I think that this is the least likely to be entirely finished. This is probably just concept art and not representative of a finished ship, though I could be wrong. We do know that recently CIG did reaffirm about base building, but iCache, server meshing, things like that are probably still going to have to be in place before we can do that. And there's a lot of questions to settle, not only just in regards to the ship and basically how do you build a base on site, but all the supporting components would also have to be put in there. Where do you buy them? How much does land cost? Have all the assets been built? All these other things that kind of come part and parcel with a ship like this. This is somewhat like a system like mining or salvage or something like that. It just doesn't wink into existence overnight just because you built the ship. It's not just like, oh, put it here, boom. It's not like placing a box somewhere on the floor of your ship. So it's probably going to be a lot more involved with, when we're talking about CIG, it's going to be a lot more involved. You can't just say, oh, hey, it'd be a lot easier to navigate around the star system if we had a 2D map with just drop-down menus that'll let us pick locations. CIG's like, no. It has to be bespoke. It has to be holographic. It has to be, paradigm shifting. It has to be all these things. And, they can't ever do things simply just to get them done. It has to be a whole song and dance. So this, for those reasons, I think that this is the least likely of the two. One that I have predicted in the past, the other one that other people have predicted, and I am very sympathetic to their view or their predictions. I shared their enthusiasm and their expectation that is what this is. So that is kind of what I think that we're going to be getting. For the gunship, let me go out on a limb and say $750. For the base builder, I don't think that you're going to get away with it for less than 300, because there's obviously going to be a big call for it out there, and hopefully the not too distant future. I mean, it's possible that CIG could let us claim land now and then just have that propagate across all instances and lock that out. It's possible. But I think that it is probably going to be something that comes along with iCache and server meshing and all of that in a fairly early stage, because, you know, once again, once iCache and server meshing are in, it's not like they're done and we never have to look at them again. They're going to iterate upon it. So I think that this is going to be something that comes in early along with that. Now, would I purchase either one of these ships? Base building ship is a flat no. And not because I think that base building is going to be terrible or impractical. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, oh my God, base builder, I can't wait. But I think down the road, and I realize that at face value, you might go, oh yeah, now I can build a base, boom, 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 boom. But that's kind of a one-time thing, or at least not something that you would do very frequently. So investing whatever it is into that ship, and I mean, something like that will probably come in about $300 mark. I don't know that is indeed a practical idea for me as a pirate. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I'll probably know more than enough people who have it so that I won't really ever need to. And once again, I mean, ultimately down the road, it's something I could probably buy in game. So for a base building ship, as I expect that the Nomad is going to be, no. For the gunship, there's kind of a reason why I've never shown any of the images that have been shown to us. I mean, and the reason, I mean, well, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, you can sit there and say, you know, they could be wrong. It could be total a mislead. Someone's just, memeing on somebody. There's a lot of, but for me personally, when I saw the images of it, I was just like, I hope not, because it looks like it could potentially be kind of not great. And so I'm hopeful that what people were kind of shown and what people are seeing is a very early model and not something that actually went into production. Or indeed maybe CIG just testing the waters and, maybe letting something slip out to see what people thought of it. I'm not all that great. I'm not all that happy about the design. But, I mean, we're talking about speculative sketches based on imperfect relayed information. I'll wait and see. But, once again, talking about the recent episode where I talked about buyer's regret, do I want to, close that door for myself before I have a chance to enjoy the walk through it? I don't know. Certainly, to a certain degree, I'm somewhat cool on the Polaris. Not entirely, I have it as a buyback, so it's not, it's not something that it's not like that door is permanently closed to me. It's always there. The Nautilus, given what we've learned about interdiction in the game, and I'm still holding out hope for that ship, but I do recognize that it does have some issues with it, that, it is the current big ship that I own. So I'm not entirely as bullish about it as I was. The Hammerhead is kind of an easy no for me. I certainly could NPC crew the turrets. That's something that's easily within reach for me. But I'm not... the practical experience of flying the Hammerhead and kind of seeing the cockpit view in it, the lack of facilities within the ship, the unknown date as to when any of those things are going to be fixed has kind of made that ship a hard no, a hard pass for me. I have one as a loaner and I barely ever use it except for the memes or crashing it into, or not me crashing it into, station doors crashing into my ship. I really don't see myself ever owning that thing. It's just a terrible, terrible ship. Could a gunship change all that? Potentially, but You know, I think that when you're talking, and realistically, that I mean, spending that amount of money doesn't really qualify in this conversation because I've already kind of spent the money. It would just be a question of moving the money from column A to column B. It would depend on what I see of the ship. And what I have seen of the ship, if real, is somewhat questionable as to its design. And, you know, very often CIG talks about design language, shape language, all these things like that. But they very often omit the practicality of things. They kind of base their designs on kind of artistic idealizations rather than the practical reality, the practical mechanical realities of the game that they're building. And that has been one of CIG's Achilles heel throughout their entire shipbuilding history. And one problem that unfortunately really kind of comes up and bites them in the ass in many ways, that unfortunately they're too far ahead in their design process by the time they realize the mistake, and so they only really fix it in later ships, and the original ships tend to just languish in, you know, what's the word? Starts with a P. Oh my god, and it's escaping me. It's 1 second. Purgatory. That's what it is. I was sitting there going like Paragon, Perpetual. Yeah, Purgatory. A lot of these ships just languish like lost souls in purgatory, waiting for the fixes that the original designs, you know, the things that the original designs omitted. And so I'm very leery about purchasing a ship like that, because we've seen so many ships where CIG has kind of like promised fixes, and then it's kind of like, well, maybe not. And other times where they've just kind of avoided discussing the topic altogether because they don't want to incur the work debt that would come with admitting a mistake and then having to then correct that mistake and then adding yet another thing onto the pile. So yeah, it's going to depend on the sale. It's going to depend on what's revealed and what we see. But apart from that, speaking about Purgatory, we will be talking on Monday, definitely about the Death of a Spaceman information that Chris dropped today. Certainly some very interesting stuff, some kind of different weird ideas involving clones, which I didn't know was a thing that they're going for, a little EVE Online-ish. Not sure if I'm all that bullish about that, but there's other things that obviously are going to be things that change the game, I think, in a very positive way in the future once death really does have an actual cost. And we'll talk about that, of course, on Monday. Anyways, enjoy your weekend. Thanks for watching. See you later.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.